Have you ever wondered if a single moment could rewrite someone's entire destiny? What if I told you that on a cold November evening in Munich, a wealthy man walked into a small restaurant and made an order that would shake the foundations of everything we believe about kindness? Second chances and the invisible threads that connect us all? This is not just a story, this is a mirror. And by the end, you might see yourself reflected in it. Soft piano music begins, melancholic but hopeful, setting the atmosphere for what's about to unfold. Her name was Anna, 43 years old, mother of two, widow for 5 years. She stood behind the counter of Haus am See, a modest family restaurant tucked away in the quieter streets of Munich, far from the tourist lights and the Michelin stars. The kind of place where locals came for warmth, not prestige. The walls were cream-colored, slightly faded. The wooden tables had scratches that told stories of decades. And Anna, she wore those same marks invisibly across her heart. 5 years ago, her husband Thomas died in a car accident. Sudden, brutal, final. He was the chef, she was the heart. Together they had built that restaurant from nothing, transforming it into a second home for neighbors, for workers, for lonely souls seeking comfort in a bowl of soup and a smile that cost nothing extra. When Thomas died, Anna didn't just lose her husband. She lost her partner, her co-dreamer, the hands that cooked while she served, the voice that laughed with her in the kitchen at midnight when they counted coins and called themselves rich anyway. She kept the restaurant open, not because it was profitable, it barely was, but because closing it would mean admitting he was truly gone. And she wasn't ready for that. Her children, Lucas and Sophie, now 16 and 13, had grown quieter over the years. Lucas worked part-time stocking shelves at a supermarket to help with bills. Sophie stopped asking for new clothes. They learned early that love sometimes wears the face of sacrifice. Anna's hands were always moving, serving tables, washing dishes, smiling even when her feet ached and her eyes stung from exhaustion. She had become a masterpiece of endurance. But endurance, no matter how beautiful, has limits. The music shifts subtly and tension begins to build in the atmosphere. It was the third week of November. Winter was tightening its grip on Munich. The kind of cold that seeps through jackets and settles in bones. The restaurant was struggling, more than usual. Bills piled up like silent accusations on her desk. The heating system was failing. The roof had a leak she couldn't afford to fix. Every night, she'd sit alone after closing, staring at numbers that refused to add up, praying for a miracle she wasn't sure she believed in anymore. One evening, a letter arrived, official, cold, from the landlord. Rent overdue for 3 months. She had 30 days to pay the full amount or vacate the property. 30 days. The restaurant that held her husband's memory, her children's childhood, her entire identity was slipping through her fingers like water. She didn't tell Lucas or Sophie. How could she? They had already lost so much. She smiled at breakfast, packed their lunches, kissed their foreheads, and carried the weight alone, the way mothers do, as if their spines were made of steel and their hearts of stone. But they're not. That night, Anna stood in the empty restaurant after closing. The chairs were stacked. The floor was clean. Everything in its place, except her. She sat at table 7, Thomas's favorite spot by the window, and for the first time in 5 years, she allowed herself to break. Not loud, not dramatic, just silent tears falling onto worn wood, absorbed by the same table that had once held their dreams. She whispered into the darkness, "I can't do this anymore." And the darkness, as it often does, said nothing back. The music softens, creating a sense of emptiness and despair. The next evening began like any other. A handful of regulars, an elderly couple who always ordered the same thing, a university student studying over coffee that had long gone cold. The usual rhythm of a restaurant that survived on loyalty rather than popularity. Then the door opened, and everything changed. He was tall, perhaps in his early 60s, with silver hair perfectly styled and a coat that whispered wealth without shouting it. His shoes were polished to a mirror shine. His posture spoke of boardrooms and first-class flights. He looked, quite frankly, like he had taken a wrong turn from a five-star hotel. Anna approached with her professional smile, the one she had perfected over years of hiding pain behind politeness. "Good evening. Welcome to House C. Just one tonight?" He nodded. His eyes, a sharp grey, scanned the room not with judgment, but with something else. Curiosity, perhaps, or recognition. She led him to a table near the window, handed him the menu. A simple, laminated sheet with dishes her husband had created. Recipes she refused to change because changing them felt like erasing him. The man studied the menu for a long moment. Then he looked up at Anna and asked, "What would you recommend?" It was a simple question, but something in his tone made her pause. It wasn't the casual inquiry of a hungry customer. It felt deeper, like he was asking for more than food. Anna hesitated. Then, surprising herself, she answered honestly, "The rinder roulade, beef roulade. It was my husband's specialty. He used to say it wasn't just a meal. It was a memory served on a plate." The man's expression softened. "He sounds like a wise man." "He was," Anna replied quietly. "He's gone now." A moment of silence hung between them like a delicate thread. Then the man said, "I'll have that, please. And whatever you think pairs best with it." Anna nodded and disappeared into the kitchen. The music builds gently, suggesting something is shifting in the story. She prepared the dish herself. Her hands moved through the motions Thomas had taught her, rolling the beef, seasoning it with the exact amounts he used to eyeball with casual perfection. The smell filled the kitchen, and for a moment, she could almost feel him standing beside her, guiding her hands, whispering encouragement the way he used to when she doubted herself. When she brought the plate to the man's table, he looked at it with something close to reverence. "This looks extraordinary," he said. "I hope it tastes like a memory," Anna replied, echoing her husband's words without meaning to. The man took his first bite, closed his eyes, chewed slowly, and when he opened his eyes again, they were glistening with unshed tears. "My God," he whispered. "This is exactly how my mother used to make it. Exactly." Anna felt her throat tighten. "Your mother?" He nodded slowly, lost in a memory that seemed to transport him across decades. "She died when I was 17. I've spent 40 years searching for this taste in restaurants across Germany, across Europe. I'd given up finding it, and here it is. In this small place I almost walked past," they talked. Not like customer and server, but like two people who had both known loss and learned to carry it with whatever grace they could muster. He told her about his mother, a woman who had worked 3 jobs to raise him alone after his father left, about how she'd make this dish on Sundays, the only day she rested, and how the smell of it meant home, meant safety, meant love in its purest form. He'd built a fortune in real estate, hotels, properties, success by every worldly measure. But he'd trade it all, he said, for one more Sunday with her, one more meal at her simple table, one more moment to tell her he understood now, as an adult, just how much she had sacrificed. Anna told him about Thomas, about the restaurant. And then, without planning to, without meaning to break her own rule of keeping her struggles private, she told him about the letter. About the 30 days, about the impossible choice between giving up and somehow finding money that didn't exist. She didn't know why she was telling this stranger her deepest fear. But grief recognizes grief, and sometimes the safest place to be vulnerable is with a stranger who understands the weight you carry. When he finished his meal, savoring every last bite as though it were a prayer, he asked for the check. Anna brought it, her hands steady despite the emotion still lingering from their conversation. 68 euros, a modest price for a meal that had clearly meant the world to him. He looked at it, then at her, and pulled out his wallet. The music swells with anticipation. What he placed on the table wasn't a credit card, it was a check. Anna glanced at it casually, expecting to see the meal amount, perhaps a generous tip. But when her eyes focused on the numbers, her breath caught in her throat, like a physical force had struck her. 50,000 euros. She looked up at him, her hands beginning to tremble uncontrollably. This must be a mistake, the man smiled, a gentle, knowing smile that held decades of wisdom and purpose. No mistake. I don't understand. Why would you? She couldn't even finish the question because he interrupted softly, leaning forward so only she could hear. 30 years ago, I was a 17-year-old boy who had just lost his mother. I was angry, lost. I made stupid decisions, got involved with the wrong people. I was headed toward a life that would have destroyed me completely. He paused, his eyes distant with memory, seeing a version of himself that no longer existed, but had shaped everything he became. One night, I walked into a small restaurant much like this one, hungry and broke. The owner, an older man with kind eyes, served me a full meal, even though I told him up front I couldn't pay. He said something I've never forgotten. He said, "Pay me back by being the kind of man who helps someone else when they need it." I never forgot that. I never forgot him. I looked for him years later, wanting to repay him, but he had passed away. Anna's eyes filled with tears that blurred her vision. I built my success on that kindness. That one act of grace from a stranger saved my life in ways I can't fully explain. And I've been looking for ways to pass it forward ever since. When I walked in here tonight, when I tasted that dish and tasted my mother's love again after 40 years of searching, I knew this was the place. You are the person. This restaurant, your husband's legacy, your children's future, it matters, and it deserves to survive. Anna couldn't speak. Tears streamed down her face unchecked, and she didn't bother to wipe them away. Her whole body was shaking. "I can't accept this," she whispered through her tears. "It's too much. I don't deserve—" "You must," he replied firmly but kindly. "Not for you. For everyone who will walk through that door tomorrow, next week, 10 years from now, looking for what I found tonight. Comfort, memory, home. A place where they're seen and valued. The world has enough expensive restaurants. It needs more places where love is still the main ingredient." He stood slowly, put on his coat with deliberate care, and buttoned it against the cold waiting outside. Before leaving, he turned back one last time, his hand on the door. "Your husband was right. It's not just a meal. It's a memory served on a plate. Don't let this place disappear. Too many things of beauty are lost because we forget their value until they're gone." And then he walked out into the November night, leaving Anna standing there holding the check that would change everything. Her entire body was shaking. She couldn't move, couldn't process what had just happened. The elderly couple at the corner table was watching, their own eyes damp. The student had looked up from his books, his mouth slightly open in wonder. They had witnessed it too. They had seen Grace walk into an ordinary evening and transform it into something sacred. Anna sank into a chair and wept, not from despair this time, but from overwhelming, crushing relief. From gratitude so profound, it felt like it might split her chest open. From the impossible, inexplicable beauty of human kindness when you least expect it. When you've given up hoping for it. When you think the world has forgotten you exist. The music shifts to something hopeful and uplifting. The next morning, Anna walked to the bank with the check, half convinced she had dreamed the entire encounter. But the teller confirmed it was real. The money was real. She paid the overdue rent that same day. The landlord's face showed genuine relief, and she realized he hadn't wanted to evict her either. She fixed the roof before the next rain, repaired the heating system so customers wouldn't shiver through their meals. She even hired a part-time cook, a young woman recently immigrated from Syria, giving her the same chance someone had once given Anna and Thomas. But more than the practical repairs, Anna made a decision that would define the restaurant's future. She started a tradition. Every Sunday, one meal was free for anyone who needed it. No questions asked, no proof of hardship required. No applications or interviews, students struggling through university, elderly pensioners stretching fixed incomes, homeless individuals who rarely felt welcome anywhere, anyone carrying weight they couldn't name. She called it Thomas's Table, and she set it by the window where he used to sit. Word spread slowly at first, then faster. The restaurant began to fill again, not just with customers, but with community. People came not only for food, but for the feeling they got when they walked through those doors. The feeling that they mattered, that they were seen. That in a world that often measured worth by wealth and status, here was a place that measured it by heartbeat alone. Lucas started helping more in the kitchen, learning his father's recipes with a dedication that brought tears to Anna's eyes. He had his father's hands, she noticed. The same careful way of seasoning, the same intuitive understanding of when something was ready. Sophie began greeting customers at the door with the same warm smile her mother wore, making everyone feel like they were coming home rather than just coming to eat. The restaurant became what it had always been meant to be, what Thomas had envisioned when he first opened its doors 20 years earlier. A place where love was tangible, where it could be tasted and felt and remembered, where every plate carried not just food, but intention, care, and the simple revolutionary act of feeding someone's hunger, both physical and spiritual. Anna never saw the millionaire again. She didn't know his name. She never got the chance to thank him properly, to tell him that he hadn't just saved a restaurant, but had restored a family, had given her children back their mother, had reminded her that miracles still happen in the mundane, in the everyday, in the ordinary moments when we least expect them. But in a way, she thanked him every single day by keeping the doors open, by maintaining Thomas's recipes exactly as he'd made them, by passing forward the very kindness that had been passed to her, by being for someone else what that stranger had been for her, a lifeline when drowning, a light when lost, a reminder that humanity at its core is still capable of breathtaking beauty. Here's what that story teaches us, what it whispers to anyone willing to listen. Kindness is never wasted. It ripples outward in ways we cannot see. It echoes through time in patterns we cannot predict. It returns in forms we cannot anticipate, and at moments we cannot plan. That man could have eaten at any restaurant in Munich. He could have chosen any of the dozens of Michelin-starred establishments that would have fawned over his wealth and status. He could have written that check to a charity with a glossy brochure and a tax receipt, feeling good about his generosity in an abstract, distant way. But he chose something different. He chose to look into the eyes of one struggling woman and say, without words first, but then with the most powerful words possible, "You matter. Your pain matters. Your fight matters. Your husband's legacy matters. Your children's future matters." And in doing so, he didn't just save a business. He restored hope. He reignited purpose. He reminded Anna, and through her story he reminds all of us, that we are never as alone as we feel in our darkest moments. How many times have you felt invisible, forgotten, like your struggle didn't matter because it wasn't happening on a grand stage, wasn't being documented for the world to see, wasn't dramatic enough to deserve attention? How many times have you fought battles no one applauded, carried burdens no one acknowledged, and wondered if anyone even noticed you were breaking under the weight? This story is your answer. Someone sees, even when you can't see it yourself, even when you're convinced you're alone, even when the darkness whispers that no one cares. And sometimes help arrives not as a distant miracle, not as a lottery win or a dramatic intervention, but as a stranger walking through your door at exactly the right moment, ordering exactly the right meal, and seeing exactly what you needed them to see. So I want to ask you something, and I want you to really think about it. Have you ever been Anna? Have you ever been the millionaire? Have you been the one who desperately needed saving, standing on the edge of giving up, holding on by threads so thin they were nearly invisible? Or have you been the one who saved someone without even fully knowing it, whose small act of kindness rippled out in ways you never witnessed? Share your story in the comments below, because I truly believe that every single person watching this video, every single person who has made it to this point in the story, has been touched by unexpected kindness at some point in their life, or has been the source of it for someone else. Perhaps without even realizing the magnitude of what they did. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that hope is real and kindness still exists in a world that often feels cold and transactional, please let me know by hitting that like button. Subscribe if you want more stories that remind us what it means to be human, to struggle, to survive, and most importantly, to help each other along the way. Because that's what we're here for, ultimately. Not to accumulate wealth or status or possessions, but to ease each other's burdens, to lighten each other's loads, to be for someone else what we hope someone will be for us when we need it most. And before you go, before you return to whatever tasks and troubles and triumphs await you today, I'll leave you with this final thought. The next time you have the chance to be kind, to help, to truly see someone standing in front of you, don't wait for the perfect moment. Don't wait until you have more money, more time, more resources. That moment is now. That person might be standing right in front of you, invisible to everyone else, but visible to you if you choose to look. Because one day, you might be the millionaire who walks into a stranger's life and changes everything with a single act of grace. Or you might be Anna, standing in your own metaphorical restaurant, wondering if anyone sees your struggle, if anyone cares that you're drowning. And when that moment comes, may someone see you the way that stranger saw Anna. May someone offer you the grace you need when you need it most. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to this story, for letting it touch whatever part of you needed to be touched today. And remember, in a world that often feels cold and indifferent, in a society that measures worth by all the wrong metrics, you have the power to be someone's warmth. You have the ability to be someone's answered prayer. You have the capacity to change everything with one intentional act of kindness. See you in the next story. Until then, be the miracle someone is praying for. The soft music fades out, leaving only silence and the echo of a story that will linger long after the screen goes dark.